"Where is your mother?" asked my brother, Arthur, looking alarmed as he walked in holding the gift bags on Christmas Day. "I evicted her. She was just taking up space here," my son laughed. My daughter-in-law was sitting on the sofa like she owned the place. My brother, a serious man and a federal judge, picked up the phone and made a quick call. Moments later, their lives were transformed into absolute chaos. But let me tell you how we got here, because this story didn't start on that Christmas night. This story started long before, back when I still believed that a mother's love could conquer anything, even the coldness of a son who no longer recognized me as the woman who gave him life. The door opened with a sharp thud that made the wooden frame tremble. Arthur walked in carrying 3 gift bags wrapped in gold and red paper, with shiny bows reflecting the lights of the Christmas tree twinkling in the corner of the living room. His face wore that serene expression that always characterized him, that calm of a man who had spent 30 years behind a dark oak desk, handing down sentences, listening to testimonies, separating truth from lies with the precision of a surgeon. My younger brother, my protector since we were children in that dusty town in the Midwest, back when he would defend me from the kids who made fun of my uneven pigtails and my patched-up shoes. Arthur, Arthur, always Arthur, the man who never raised his voice, but who could make any liar look down with just a single glance. The man who had promised our parents, on their deathbed, that he would take care of me if anything bad ever happened. And now he was here, in this house that I had bought myself, with the money of my grief, with the blood-stained money of my dead husband. "Merry Christmas," he said with that deep voice that always made me feel safe. "I brought gifts for everyone. Where is Margaret? Where is my sister?" The silence that followed was so heavy it could have crushed the ceramic tile floor. Caleb was standing by the large window overlooking the front yard, that garden I had planted with my own hands when we moved here 15 years ago, back when he still called me Mom with affection, and not with that distant tone he adopted after getting married. He was wearing an impeccable white shirt, black dress pants, and shiny shoes that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe combined. My son, my Caleb, the boy who had cried in my arms when his father died, crushed by those steel beams at the construction site. The teenager who had sworn he would always take care of me, that he would never leave me alone, that I was the most important thing in his life, that Caleb didn't exist anymore. The man standing in front of Arthur was a stranger with my son's face. Caleb turned slowly, and on his lips was a smile, a small, almost imperceptible smile, but it was there, a smile that froze my blood when I saw it for the first time, just 2 hours ago, when he threw my things into black plastic bags and told me to leave. A smile that said he had won something, that he had managed to free himself from a burden, that he was finally free. "I evicted her," he said with that terrifying tranquility, like someone talking about the weather. "She was just taking up space here." The gift bags fell from Arthur's hands. The sound was dull, muffled by the expensive cream-colored carpet that Veronica had chosen 6 months ago, that carpet I couldn't walk on with my old slippers because she said they stained it. The gold ribbons came undone, and one of the packages opened partially, revealing the corner of a purple box. "What did you say?" Arthur's voice came out low, dangerously low. That voice I knew, that voice that had preceded sentences of 30 years in prison, that voice that meant something terrible was about to happen. And then Veronica moved. My daughter-in-law, the woman who had entered this house 5 years ago with a sweet smile and kind words, calling me Mama Margaret with a soft voice, asking me for cooking tips, hugging me in the mornings, the woman who had transformed into my silent executioner, into the architect of my destruction, into the snake whispering poison into my son's ear every night until he could no longer see his own mother with the eyes of love. Veronica got up from the large brown leather sofa, that sofa I had chosen when I still had a voice in this house, when I was still consulted on decisions, when I was still treated like the owner and not the intruder. She was wearing a tight red dress that marked her thin figure, high heels that clicked against the floor, her black hair pulled back in an elegant bun. 38 years old, beautiful, calculating, ruthless. "Arthur, what a surprise," she said with that honeyed voice I had learned to loathe. "We didn't know you were coming so early. Dinner isn't ready yet. Where is Margaret?" Arthur didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on Caleb, those dark eyes that had seen every possible lie in a courtroom. "Where is my sister?" Caleb shrugged. That casual, indifferent gesture, as if we were talking about a housekeeper and not his mother, as if I were something disposable, as if the 68 years of my life meant nothing, as if the sleepless nights when he had a fever, the double shifts I worked to pay for his college tuition, the tears I shed begging God to protect him, as if all that could be erased with a shrug of the shoulders. "I already told you, Uncle. I evicted her. This is my house now. Veronica and I need our space. We're hosting important guests tonight. Business people, potential clients. We can't have Mom here doing her old lady things, being a nuisance, taking up space. It's better this way. For everyone. For everyone." As if I had agreed, as if they had asked me, as if my opinion mattered regarding the house that I myself had bought with the $150,000 they gave me when my husband's body was pulled from the rubble of that building under construction. $150,000 stained with blood and pain. $150,000 that I used to buy this 3-bedroom house with a yard because I wanted Caleb to grow up in a nice, safe, dignified place. Because I wanted to give him everything I never had. Arthur's face changed. I knew him well enough to see the transformation. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed just a fraction of an inch. His hands, which had been relaxed at his sides, closed into tight fists. But his voice remained calm, cold, deadly. "You evicted her, your own mother, Margaret Thompson, the woman who gave birth to you, the woman who worked 18 hours a day so you could go to a private university, the woman who sold even her wedding rings to pay for your graduation suit. Those were different times, Uncle." Caleb crossed his arms over his chest. "Things are different now. I have my own family, my own priorities. Mom was interfering, always with her comments, her complaints, her needs. I'm not a child anymore. I need to live my life." Veronica walked over to Caleb and put a hand on his shoulder. A possessive gesture. A gesture that said, "This man is mine. This house is mine. This victory is mine." Her red lips curled into a small, triumphant smile. "You understand, Arthur," she said softly. "It's just that Margaret and I have very different personalities. She is from another generation. She doesn't understand how we live now. And frankly, Caleb needs to focus on his career, on growing the business. He can't be worrying about his mom all the time." Arthur took a step forward. Just one. But that step made Caleb instinctively step back. Because Arthur Thompson, retired federal judge, a man who had faced down cartel leaders in court, who had withstood bribery attempts and death threats, who had sent men 3 times his size to prison, had a presence that filled any room when he was angry. "Where is she now?" he asked. "Right now. Where is Margaret?" "I don't know." Caleb avoided his gaze. "She left. I left her on the corner with her things. I guess she took a taxi or something." "You left her on the corner, on Christmas Eve, with her things. A 68-year-old woman, in the street." Arthur's words weren't a question. They were an accusation. Each word fell like a hammer striking metal. "She has money," Veronica intervened quickly. "We gave her some cash. She can go to a hotel, or stay with a friend. It's not like we left her destitute." Arthur took his phone out of his gray suit pocket. His fingers moved over the screen rapidly, dialing a number. He brought the device to his ear. The silence in the room was absolute. I could hear my own heart beating from where I was, sitting in the back seat of Arthur's car, parked outside the house, watching everything through the illuminated window. Because yes, I was there. Arthur had found me on that corner, sitting on the curb of the sidewalk, with my 3 black plastic bags beside me, crying like I hadn't cried since my husband's funeral. He had put me in his car, held me in silence while I soaked his shirt with my tears, and then he had told me, "Stay here, sister. Don't go in. Just let me talk to them. I need to see this with my own eyes." And now I was seeing. I was listening to my son laugh about kicking me out. I was watching my daughter-in-law sit on my sofa as if she were a queen on her throne. I was watching how the family I had built with my hands destroyed by work crumbled into ashes before my eyes. "Benjamin," spoke Arthur into the phone. "It's me. I need you to come to this address immediately. Yes, now. It is urgent. Bring your briefcase, and bring the papers I asked you to prepare last week. Yes, those. The ones for Margaret Thompson. Exactly. I'll be waiting. He ended the call, put the phone away. And then he looked at Caleb with an expression I had never seen on him. An expression of absolute contempt. "What are you doing?" Caleb asked. And for the first time, there was a touch of nervousness in his voice. "Uncle, this is none of your business. This is between Mom and me." "Oh, it is my business, Caleb." Arthur spoke with a terrible calm. "It is entirely my business. Because when you illegally evict a person from their own property, when you commit financial abuse against an elderly person, when you violate the civil rights of a 68-year-old woman, it becomes my business. And more importantly, it becomes a federal matter." "What are you talking about?" Caleb's voice went up an octave. "Her property? This is my house. I bought it. I pay the bills. I did the renovations. Mom only lived here because I allowed it. Out of charity. Out of charity." That word came out of my son's mouth as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if the 15 years I had lived under this roof, cooking, cleaning, taking care of him when he came home tired from work, ironing his shirts at 6 in the morning so he would look impeccable for his meetings, as if all that had been a favor he was doing me, as if I were a beggar grateful for the crumbs of his generosity. Arthur reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a small black leather notebook and a silver pen. He opened the notebook to a blank page and began to write. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Every stroke of the pen on the paper sounded like a verdict being written. "I need you to tell me something, Caleb," he said without looking up from the notebook. "This house. The one at 345 Oak Avenue. The 3-bedroom house. 2 bathrooms, 2-car garage, front and backyard. When exactly did you buy it?" Caleb looked at Veronica. She returned the look, and I could see something pass between them. A silent communication. A moment of doubt. The first indication that perhaps, just perhaps, they hadn't thought through all the details of their perfect plan to get rid of me. 15 years ago, Caleb said finally. When I graduated and got my first job at the architecture firm, Mom and I bought it together. Well, technically I bought it. She contributed some money, but the loan was in my name. "Some money," repeated Arthur, writing. "How much exactly was that? Some money." "I don't remember exactly." Caleb shifted uncomfortably. "It was like $20,000 or $30,000, I think. A contribution. But I paid the rest. I signed the mortgage loan. I've been paying the monthly payments all these years. 20 or 30,000. Arthur nodded slowly, as if he were weighing this information with great care. "Interesting. And do you have any document to back up this version of events? Any contract? Any receipt? Any proof of bank transfer from your account to Margaret's for that purchase money?" The silence that followed was deafening. Caleb opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His eyes sought Veronica again, but she was looking away, studying her perfectly manicured red nails as if they were suddenly the most fascinating thing in the world. "I don't need documents, Uncle." Caleb tried to sound firm, but his voice trembled slightly. "This was 15 years ago. It was a family agreement. Between Mom and me, there was no need for formal papers. Besides, she lived here rent-free for all this time, without paying rent, without paying utilities, without contributing anything. I would say that more than paid back any contribution she might have made." Arthur stopped writing. He looked up. His eyes met Caleb's and held the gaze until my son had to look away toward the ceramic floor. "Lived rent-free," said Arthur quietly. "Your mother lived rent-free. The woman who prepared your meals, who washed your clothes, who cleaned your house, who took care of you when you were sick, who welcomed your clients when they came for meetings here, who maintained the garden, who organized your social events. That is living for free, in your definition." "Those are things any mother does," interrupted Veronica. Her voice had lost its honeyed softness and now sounded sharp, defensive. "It's not like we paid her to be a housewife. Living here was her choice. No one forced her." Arthur ignored her completely. He didn't even turn his head in her direction. He kept looking at Caleb with that intensity that made people in courtrooms confess things they had sworn to keep secret. "Caleb, I am going to ask you something, and I want you to think very carefully before answering, because your answer is going to determine many things that are going to happen in the next few minutes. The deed to this house, the legal document that certifies ownership, is it in your name only, Or is it in your mother's name too? Only in my name, Caleb answered quickly. Too quickly. Like I told you, I signed the loan. I am the legal owner. Mom only contributed some money as initial help, but the property was always mine. Arthur nodded. He took out his phone again, tapped the screen a few times, swiped his finger, zoomed in on something. Then, he turned the phone toward Caleb, showing him the screen. Then you can explain to me what this is. Caleb leaned in, squinting to see the screen. I couldn't see what Arthur was showing from where I was, sitting in the car with my hands clenched in my lap, feeling my breathing accelerate. But I could see Caleb's face. I could see his expression of confidence crumble slowly, like a building whose foundations have just given way. That is, his voice faded. It is the deed to this property, Arthur completed. Downloaded directly from the public records of the county recorder's office 2 hours ago, when Margaret called me crying from the corner of your street. The deed showing that this house, 345 Oak Avenue, was purchased on the 15th of August 2010 by Mrs. Margaret Thompson, widow of Thompson, for the total amount of $150,000. Paid in cash. No mortgage loan. No financing. Cash money coming from the accidental death indemnity at work of your father, Robert Thompson, who passed away on the 3rd of March 2010, when a steel beam came loose at the site where he worked as a supervisor. The color had vanished from Caleb's face. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The deed also shows, continued Arthur with an implacable voice, that 3 months after the purchase, on the 11th of November 2010, Margaret Thompson added her son Caleb Thompson as a co-owner of the home, not as sole owner, as co-owner, 50% for each. And you know why she did that, Caleb? Because she wanted you to have security. She wanted you to feel that this was your house too. She wanted to give you half of the only thing of value she had in this world, because that is what mothers who love their children do. They give. They always give. No, whispered Caleb. That can't be right, the bank told me. What did the bank tell you? Asked Arthur. That you were the only owner? That your name was the only one on the documents? Is that what they told you? Or is that what you wanted to hear because it suited you better? I didn't know. Caleb shook his head. I never saw those papers. Mom took care of all the paperwork. I just signed where she asked me to sign. Exactly, said Arthur. You signed where she asked you to. You signed documents you probably didn't even read because you trusted your mother, because you knew she would never do anything to harm you. And now, 15 years later, you evict her from the house she bought with the money from your father's death. You kick her out into the street like she's trash. You tell her she was just taking up space. Arthur put the phone away, closed the black notebook, put away the pen. Every movement was precise, controlled, but I could see the fury contained in the tension of his shoulders, in the way his hands trembled slightly. Veronica had stood up. Her face was rigid, her eyes hard like black stones. This changes nothing, she said coldly. Even if Margaret is a co-owner, Caleb is too. He has the right to live here, and as his wife, so do I. If she didn't want to be here, if she didn't like how we lived, she could have left on her own. No one forced her to stay. No one forced her to stay, repeated Arthur slowly, as if tasting the words in his mouth. Then explain to me why you threw her into the street with her belongings in garbage bags. Why wasn't she allowed to take her furniture, her photos, her memories? Why was she kicked out of her own house without prior notice, without time to make plans, without even the dignity of packing her things properly? She has half the house, not the whole house, Veronica answered. She can sell her share if she wants. She can keep the money. But she can't stay here, interfering in our marriage, criticizing everything I do, making Caleb feel guilty for wanting to live his own life. There it was, the truth finally coming to light. It wasn't about space. It wasn't about me being a nuisance. It was about Veronica not being able to stand, having witnesses to how she manipulated my son. She couldn't stand having someone who knew Caleb from before she appeared, someone who remembered the good and affectionate man he had been, someone who could clearly see how she was transforming him into a cruel and cold version of himself. Arthur walked over to the window. He looked out, toward where I was sitting in his car. He saw me. Our eyes met through the illuminated glass, and in that moment, in the way he nodded slightly, I knew everything was about to change. I knew that my younger brother, that boy I had protected from the town bullies, that man who had dedicated his life to justice, was about to do something that would make Caleb and Veronica regret every cruel word they had said to me. "You know what is interesting about the law, Caleb," said Arthur, without turning from the window. "It is that it is designed to protect the vulnerable, the elderly, those who cannot defend themselves. And there are very specific laws about financial abuse against the elderly, about illegal eviction, about misappropriation of assets. And the penalties for violating those laws are quite severe." "This is ridiculous!" Caleb exploded. "You can't come here and threaten me. I am your nephew. This is my house. I have the right to decide who lives here and who doesn't." "Your house," said Arthur, turning slowly. 50% your house. And you just made the mistake of evicting the other co-owner without a court order, without due process, without any foundation other than your own selfishness and your wife's manipulation. That, my dear nephew, is a crime. And it isn't just a civil offense. It is a criminal offense." The doorbell rang. 3 long tones that resonated in the tense silence of the living room. "That must be Benjamin," said Arthur, walking toward the front door. "My lawyer, and a notary public. I hope you don't mind if he joins our little family reunion." Caleb and Veronica exchanged panicked looks. She took a step forward, her heel resonating against the floor like a gunshot. "Wait, Arthur." Her voice had lost all its previous smoothness. Now it sounded shrill, almost desperate. "It's not necessary to involve lawyers. This is a family matter. We can resolve it between us. Maybe we acted hastily. Maybe Margaret can stay in the back room for now, until we find a solution that works for everyone." "Until you find a solution that works for everyone," repeated Arthur, opening the door. "How generous of you, Veronica. Allowing the owner of the house to live in the smallest room of her own property. What extraordinary consideration." A tall man entered the living room, carrying a brown leather briefcase. Benjamin Ross. I knew him from family gatherings, from past Christmases, when we were still a real family. He must have been about 55, gray hair combed back, impeccable gray suit, burgundy tie. His eyes scanned the room with the speed of someone used to assessing complex situations in seconds. "Good evening," he greeted with a professional voice. "I apologize for interrupting your Christmas Eve celebration, but Mr. Thompson informed me there was an urgent situation requiring immediate legal attention." "Benjamin, thanks for coming so quickly." Arthur closed the door behind him. "Let me introduce you to my nephew Caleb Thompson and his wife Veronica Perez Thompson. They are the current occupants of the property located at 345 Oak Avenue. Current occupants. Not owners, not residents, occupants." The word fell into the room like a stone in a pond, creating ripples of discomfort that reached every corner. Benjamin placed his briefcase on the coffee table. That glass table I had cleaned thousands of times, where I had served coffee to Caleb's guests, where I had put fresh flowers every week for 15 years. He opened the briefcase with precise movements and took out a manila folder, several documents held with clips, and an electronic tablet. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Perez Thompson." Benjamin began with a formal tone. "I am here representing Mrs. Margaret Thompson, legal co-owner of this home. I have been informed that tonight, at approximately 5:30 in the afternoon, you proceeded to remove my client from the property without her consent, utilizing methods that constitute illegal eviction, coercion, and potential financial violence against an elderly adult. That is a lie." Caleb took a step forward, his hands turned into fists at his sides. "No one removed her by force. We asked her to leave. There is a difference." "Ah, so you admit you asked her to leave." Benjamin took a small digital recorder out of his jacket pocket. "Do you mind if I record this conversation? It is completely legal in this state as long as one of the parties consents, and I consent. For documentation purposes, of course. We aren't going to say anything else without our own lawyer present," intervened Veronica, crossing her arms. "That is your right," Benjamin nodded, pressing the record button anyway. "However, I must inform you that I already have sufficient evidence to proceed. Testimonies from neighbors who saw Mrs. Thompson being escorted off the property with her belongings in plastic bags. Text messages and emails documenting a pattern of psychological abuse over the last 6 months. And of course, the property deed clearly demonstrating Mrs. Thompson is a legal co-owner of this real estate. Veronica had gone visibly pale. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the back of the sofa. "What messages?" she asked with a tense voice. "What emails?" Benjamin took out the tablet and swiped his finger over the screen. "Oh, there are quite a few. For example, this text message you sent to Caleb on October 3rd. I quote verbatim. I can't stand having your mother here anymore. She meddles in everything, criticizes how I cook, how I clean, how I dress. You need to choose, Caleb. Either she goes or I go." End quote. Caleb turned toward Veronica with wide eyes. "You told him that?" She didn't answer. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Oh, and this other one," continued Benjamin, "from November 23rd. I'm sick of your mother acting like this is her house. I told her she can't use the living room when we have guests. And what do? Nothing. You defend her. You need to set boundaries, or this isn't going to work." He swiped again. "Oh, and this is interesting. From December 10th, just 4 days ago. Caleb, I spoke to my father. He has a contact who can get us the papers, so the house is completely in your name. No one has to know. Your mom doesn't even understand these things. It would be easy." "Fraud," said Arthur quietly. "Conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. Veronica, you just added several more years to your possible prison sentence." "Prison," Caleb's voice cracked. "Arthur, this is going too far. We are family. You can't do this." "Family." Arthur walked up to Caleb until he was inches from his face. "You treated your mother like trash. You kicked her into the street on Christmas Eve. You stripped her of her dignity, her home, her security. And now you talk to me about family. Tell me, Caleb, where was your sense of family when you put your mother's things in garbage bags? Where was your respect when you told her she was just taking up space? Where was your love when you left her on the corner, not caring if she had anywhere to go?" I couldn't keep watching all this from the car. My heart was beating so fast I felt like it was going to explode. My hands were shaking. I opened the car door. I got out. My legs barely held me up after hours of crying, of feeling my world collapse, of asking myself what I had done wrong to deserve this. I walked up the stone path of the front garden, that garden I had designed, where I had planted the rose bushes that now bloomed in shades of red and pink under the Christmas lights. I climbed the 3 steps of the porch. The door was ajar. I walked in. Everyone turned to look at me. Caleb froze, his face a mask of shock and something else, something that was perhaps shame but arrived too late. Veronica let out a small, gasped cry. Benjamin nodded respectfully in my direction. And Arthur, my dear brother, extended his hand to me. "Margaret," he said softly, "come in. This is your house." I walked slowly toward the center of the living room. My old shoes on the expensive carpet I could never step on with my slippers. My simple dress, wrinkled after hours of sitting, so different from Veronica's tight red dress. My gray hair messy, while hers remained perfectly pulled back in that elegant bun. But I had something she would never have. I had the dignity of knowing that I had never caused harm on purpose, that I had never manipulated, that I had never destroyed a family out of ambition. "Hi, Mom," whispered Caleb. His voice sounded like that of a scared little boy. And for a moment, just for a moment, my mother's heart wanted to soften, wanted to forgive, wanted to reach out and tell him everything would be okay, that we could fix this, that I still loved him despite everything. Because that is what mothers do. They forgive the unforgivable. They love the unlovable. They sacrifice themselves over and over until there is nothing left of them. But then I remembered Arthur's words just an hour ago when he picked me up from that cold corner. "Sister," he had told me while I cried on his shoulder, "there comes a moment in life when forgiving becomes enabling. And enabling abuse is not love. It is self-destruction. You taught Caleb to be good, but he chose to be this. And choices have consequences. So instead of hugging him, instead of consoling him, instead of doing what I had done for 68 years of my life, yielding and sacrificing and disappearing to make others happy, I did something different, something I had never done before. I raised my head. I straightened my back. I looked my son directly in the eyes. And I said with a firm voice, a voice I didn't recognize as mine because I had never had to use it, "I am not your mom right now, Caleb. Right now I am Margaret Thompson, legal co-owner of this property. And I am here to inform you that I want you and your wife to vacate my house within 72 hours. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the ticking of the kitchen wall clock, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my own breath entering and leaving my lungs. Mom. No. Caleb shook his head. You can't do this. You can't kick us out. Where are we going to go? This is our house too. It was our house, I corrected. It was our house when we respected each other, when we shared the space with consideration, when I was treated like a human being and not like an old piece of furniture that gets in the way. But you decided that I had no place here, that I was just taking up space, that it would be better if I disappeared. Well, here I am. And now you are the ones who are going to have to find another place to live. You can't be serious. Veronica's voice had risen almost to a shriek. This house is worth over $300,000 now. We have invested in it. The bathroom renovations cost $25,000. The new kitchen, $32,000. The air conditioning system, $15,000. That is our money, our work. And who authorized those renovations? Asked Benjamin, consulting his documents. Who signed the contracts? Who approved the expenses? Because if improvements were made to a shared property without the written consent of all co-owners, that is another legal violation. Veronica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted frantically between Caleb and Benjamin, looking for an exit that didn't exist. The renovations were my idea, said Caleb quickly. I planned them. I hired the workers. Mom agreed. Agreed, I repeated, feeling the rage beginning to boil in my chest. You asked me, Caleb. You asked me if I wanted them to rip out the tiles your father and I had chosen together for the bathroom. You asked me if I wanted them to change the kitchen where I prepared thousands of meals for you. You asked me if I agreed to destroy every memory of your father that existed in this house. They were old things, he muttered without looking at me. They needed updating. They were my memories. My voice cracked, but I forced myself to continue. They were the last pieces of your father I had left. The tiles he installed with his own hands one Saturday in July, sweating under the sun because he wanted our bathroom to be perfect. The kitchen cabinet he built in his workshop because we couldn't afford a new one. The dining room lamp he gave me for our 10th anniversary. All that was replaced, thrown away, destroyed as if it meant nothing. Arthur put a hand on my shoulder. A silent gesture of support, of strength. I breathed deeply, swallowing the tears that threatened to overflow. Mrs. Thompson, said Benjamin with a soft but professional voice, I need you to confirm a few things for the legal record. Is it true that you purchased this property on the 15th of August 2010, with the money from the indemnity for the death of your husband, Robert Thompson? Yes, I answered. $150,000. Every penny they gave me for my husband's life. I used it to buy this house because I wanted Caleb to have a home. I wanted him to have security. I wanted him never to go through what I went through as a child, living from house to house, without a place to call mine. And is it true that 3 months later you added your son as a co-owner with a 50% share? Yes, I answered, feeling the weight of that decision now. I did it because I loved him, because I thought it was the right thing to do, because a mother wants to give everything to her children, even when that everything is the only thing she has. And at any point during these 15 years, did you sign documents surrendering your share of the property completely to your son? No, I said firmly. I never signed anything like that. I never gave up my share. I never renounced my right to this house. Caleb shifted uncomfortably. Mom, the lawyer who came like 6 months ago, the one who brought those papers to update the house documentation. You signed, remember? You said it was just routine paperwork. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I remembered that day. A man in a black suit had come. Veronica was present, smiling, being unusually nice to me. Caleb had told me they needed to update some documents for tax purposes. There were papers, lots of papers. I had signed where they indicated because I trusted my son, because I never thought he would be capable of deceiving me. What papers were those, Caleb? Asked Arthur with a dangerously calm voice. They were. Caleb swallowed hard. They were to simplify ownership. The lawyer said it was better for the house to be in one person's name for legal and inheritance purposes. He said Mom could live here for the rest of her life anyway, But legally, it would be simpler if I was the sole registered owner. Fraud, said Benjamin without raising his voice. Obtaining a signature by deceit. Asset stripping. Breach of trust. Mr. Thompson, you just confessed to several serious crimes in front of a notary public and on an audio recording. I didn't know. Caleb's voice sounded desperate now. Veronica said it was the right thing. Her father knows lawyers. He helped us organize everything. He said it was for our own good. For Mom's good too, so she wouldn't have to worry about taxes or legal papers. And you believed her, I said, feeling my heart break into 1,000 pieces again. You believed her. A woman you met 5 years ago, and you didn't ask me. Your mother. The woman who gave you life. You didn't consider that maybe I deserved to know what I was signing. That maybe I had the right to consult my own lawyer before putting my name on documents I didn't understand. Caleb slumped onto the sofa, his head in his hands. Veronica remained standing, stiff as a statue, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Those documents, said Benjamin, have no legal validity. They were obtained through deceit. Any judge will annul them as soon as I present them. Mrs. Thompson remains the legal co-owner of this house with a 50% share. And, as a co-owner, she has every right to request the eviction of the other occupants if there is evidence of abuse, fraud, or behavior that puts her well-being at risk. Then we are going to sell the house, said Veronica suddenly, her voice cold and calculating again. If Margaret has 50%, we can sell the property and split the money. She takes her share, we take ours, and we all move on with our lives. Arthur laughed. It was a short laugh, humorless. That is your solution, Veronica. Force a 68-year-old woman to sell her house, the only place she has in the world, so you and Caleb can keep $150,000 and go live your perfect life. What else do you want? Exploded Veronica finally. What do you want us to do? Kneel and beg for forgiveness? Live the rest of our lives being punished for a mistake? We get it. We messed up. But you can't ruin our lives over this. A mistake, I repeated slowly. You call this a mistake, as if you had spilled coffee on a shirt, as if you had forgotten an appointment. You stripped me of my home. You humiliated me. You treated me like I was nothing. You manipulated me into signing papers that took away my property. You planned to steal the only thing I had, and you call it a mistake. I wasn't the one who treated you badly, defended Veronica. I was just trying to protect my marriage, to build my own family. It's not my fault you couldn't accept that Caleb had a new life. Couldn't accept, I said, feeling something breaking inside me. Couldn't accept that my son got married. Couldn't accept that he had his own life. That is what you think. Then let me tell you something. Veronica, when Caleb introduced me to you 5 years ago, I welcomed you with open arms. I called you daughter. I taught you Caleb's favorite recipes. I helped you plan your wedding. I spent my savings to pay for the honeymoon you couldn't afford because you had just bought the new car. I defended you when my sister Patricia told me she saw something fake in your smile. My voice rose, something inside me releasing after years of being contained. I took care of you when you had the flu that first winter. I comforted you when you fought with your mother. I lent you my diamond ring, the last gift my husband gave me before dying, so you could wear it to Caleb's company gala because you wanted to look elegant, and you never gave it back. You said you had lost it. But I saw that ring on your finger 3 months ago at Thanksgiving dinner. You had gotten it resized to fit you. You kept my dead husband's ring and never said anything. Veronica paled. Caleb looked at her with wide eyes. That's not true, stammered Veronica. I didn't. Yes, it is, interrupted Arthur. I saw it too at that dinner. I was going to say something, but Margaret asked me not to. She said she didn't want to cause trouble, that maybe there was an explanation, that she didn't want to fight on Thanksgiving. My sister has spent years swallowing pain, accepting humiliations, staying quiet to keep the peace. And you interpreted it as weakness, as permission to keep abusing. Benjamin cleared his throat, bringing the attention back to legal matters. Mrs. Thompson, based on all this information, on the testimonies I have heard tonight, and on the documents I have in my possession, my professional recommendation is the following. First, we need to annul any document you signed without full knowledge of the implications. Second, we need to formally establish your rights as a co-owner, And third, we need to decide if you wish to press criminal charges for fraud, asset stripping, and elder abuse. Criminal charges. Caleb's voice sounded like a wail. Mom, no, please, I can go to prison for this. My career, my reputation, everything would be ruined. I looked at him. At my son, the baby I had carried in my arms, the boy I had comforted at night after his father's death, the young man who had graduated with honors from college thanks to my work at 2 jobs, the man who had become a stranger before my eyes. You should have thought of that before, I said with a voice I barely recognized as mine. You should have thought of your career before kicking me into the street. You should have thought of your reputation before humiliating me in front of your wife. You should have thought of the consequences before stealing my home. But you didn't do any of that. You only thought of yourself, of what you wanted, of what was convenient for you. And now that there are consequences, now that you have to face what you did, you come to me asking for mercy. I am your son, he whispered, and there were tears in his eyes. That has to mean something. It means everything, I answered, feeling my own tears threatening to come out. That is why it hurts so much. Because you are my son. Because I would have given my life for you without thinking twice. Because I spent 68 years loving you more than anything in this world. And you chose a woman you met 5 years ago over the woman who gave you life. I turned to Benjamin, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. What happens if I press charges? I asked. What really happens? Benjamin took a deep breath before answering. Asset stripping through fraud is a felony in this state. The penalty can be from 2 to 8 years in prison, depending on the value of the property involved. Elder abuse adds 1 to 3 additional years. And if conspiracy is proven, meaning multiple people planned these acts together, she would also face charges with similar sentences. Veronica let out a choked sound. She brought her hands to her chest as if she couldn't breathe. Furthermore, continued Benjamin, there would be civil consequences. You could be sued for damages. Caleb's professional license as an architect could be revoked. His assets could be seized to pay restitution. And all this would remain on his permanent record, affecting future employment opportunities, credit, even where they can live. No, moaned Veronica. No, no, no. This cannot be happening. We are not criminals. We are good people. We have a life. We have plans. We are going to have children soon. You can't destroy us like this. Good plans, I said bitterly. Plans that included getting rid of me first? Tell me, Veronica, where was I going to be in those family plans of yours? In what cheap nursing home did you plan to put me when you could no longer use me as a free servant? It wasn't like that, she shook her head frantically. We just wanted our space. We just wanted privacy. We weren't going to abandon you. We were going to help you find a good place where you lived comfortably. A good place, I repeated. Like the street corner where you left me today. That kind of good place. Arthur approached me and took my hands in his. His eyes sought mine with protective intensity. Sister, he said in a low but firm voice, I know this is difficult. I know he is your son. But you need to understand something. If you let them get away with it now, if there are no real consequences, this will only get worse. People like them don't learn from words. They learn from actions, from real loss, from real pain. And what happens to me? I asked. What kind of mother am I if I send my own son to prison? You are a mother who finally put herself first, answered Arthur. You are a woman who decided her dignity is worth more than other people's comfort. You are a human being who said enough. I looked at Caleb. He was sitting on the sofa with his head still in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Veronica was standing behind him, her red nails digging into the back of the sofa, her face a mixture of terror and rage. And in that moment, something inside me changed, something fundamental and deep. My whole life had been defined by being a mother, by giving, by sacrificing, by putting myself last. I had believed that was love, that it was the right thing, that my value as a person depended on how much I could endure for the good of others. But looking at my son now, seeing how he only cared about saving his own skin, seeing how there wasn't a single word of genuine regret, only fear of the consequences, I understood something I should have understood years ago. True love does not destroy. True love does not annul. True love does not turn a person into a ghost in their own life. I am not going to press criminal charges, I said finally. The words came out before I could think about them too much. Caleb lifted his head, his eyes shining with hope, but I raised my hand before he could speak. Not yet. There are conditions. I turned to Benjamin. What options do I have that don't involve criminal charges, but protect my rights? Benjamin nodded, as if he had expected this question. Several options. First, we can annul the fraudulent documents and formally reinstate your 50% ownership. Second, as a co-owner, you can request a court order for eviction based on the documented abusive conduct. Third, you can sue civilly for damages without pressing criminal charges. And fourth, you can force the sale of the property and keep your proportional share of the current value. How much is the house worth now? I asked. With the renovations and the real estate market increase, calculated Benjamin, consulting his tablet, probably between $320,000 and $350,000. Does that mean my share would be between $160,000 and $175,000? Correct. But the house cost me $150,000 15 years ago. They invested in renovations, without my permission. Why should I give them half of the increased value when it was my money that bought the property in the first place? That is a valid legal point, agreed Benjamin. We could argue before a judge that the base value of $150,000 should go entirely to you as the original investment, and that only the additional value should be split. That would give you approximately $200,000 and $150,000 to Caleb. That's not fair, exploded Veronica. We did all the improvements. We increased the value. You made unauthorized improvements on a property you didn't fully own, interrupted Arthur. That was your mistake. In illegal or unauthorized construction on shared property, the benefit generally goes to the owner who did not authorize the improvements. So actually, Margaret would be being generous by leaving you anything. I felt a strange sensation of power. For the first time in years, perhaps in decades, I felt I had control over my own life, that my decisions mattered, that I mattered. Here is what is going to happen, I said with a firm voice. Benjamin is going to annul the fraudulent documents. He is going to reinstate my 50% ownership of this house. Then we are going to put the house up for sale. Mom, no, Caleb stood up. This is our home. Where are we going to live? You should have thought of that before, I responded without hesitation. When you kicked me out, where did you think I was going to live? When you left me in the street, you didn't care about my home. Now it is your turn to feel what that feels like. The house is being sold, I continued, ignoring his protests. The money is divided, as Benjamin suggested. I keep $200,000. You two get $150,000. With that, you can buy a smaller apartment, rent, whatever. It's not my problem. And if we refuse to sell? Asked Veronica with clenched teeth. Then I press criminal charges, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. And you both go to prison, and the house will be sold anyway to pay restitution and legal costs. And you won't see a cent. You choose. The silence that followed was long and heavy. I could hear the clock ticking, the wind outside moving the branches of the Christmas tree I had decorated myself that morning, before everything collapsed. Veronica's agitated breathing. The sound of Caleb trying to hold back tears. There is something else, said Benjamin. Mrs. Thompson, you mentioned a ring. Your late husband's diamond ring that Mrs. Perez Thompson currently has in her possession. Veronica instinctively covered her left hand with her right, hiding the ring. That ring, continued Benjamin, was given to Mrs. Perez Thompson on loan, not as a gift. Retaining it constitutes misappropriation of another's property. The sentimental value, although difficult to quantify in legal terms, is significant. I recommend it be returned immediately. No, Veronica stepped back. This ring is mine. Margaret gave it to me. I lent it to you, I corrected, for a specific occasion, and you never gave it back. It was years ago, she argued. If you really wanted it back, you would have said something sooner. I did, I replied, feeling the rage bubbling up. I asked you 3 times. 3 times I asked you for my ring, and every time you told me you were still looking for it, that you were sure it would turn up, that it was probably in some moving box. You lied, for years, and now you wear it as if it were yours. Veronica, "Take off the ring," said Caleb with a tired voice. "Please, enough." "No." She clenched her fist tight. "I am not giving her anything. She is taking everything from us. Our house, our future, our dignity. I am not giving her this too." Arthur stepped forward, his face serious as granite. "Veronica Perez Thompson, that ring is the documented property of my sister. It was purchased by her late husband, Robert Thompson, on the 12th of June, 1983. I have the original receipt. I have photographs of Margaret wearing that ring for 30 years. And I have witnesses who heard when she lent it to you 3 years ago for the company gala. If you don't return it right now, I will add theft to the list of potential charges." Veronica's hands trembled. Her eyes darted frantically among everyone present, looking for an exit, an ally, anything that could save her. But Caleb had looked away. Benjamin watched her with a neutral but implacable expression. Arthur looked at her with the weight of 30 years of judicial experience. And I looked at her with the pain of 3 years of accumulated lies. Slowly, with rigid movements, she took off the ring. The half-carat diamond captured the light of the lamps, shining with the same fire it had when Robert put it on my finger 42 years ago, on our 5th anniversary, after saving for months from his salary as a construction worker. She threw it on the coffee table. The ring bounced once on the glass with a sharp clink before coming to rest. "Take it," she spat with venom in her voice. "Take your precious ring. Take your house. Take everything. I hope it makes you happy living alone in your victory while your son hates you for the rest of your life." I approached the table. I picked up the ring. The metal was still warm from the heat of her skin. I held it in my palm, feeling the familiar weight, remembering Robert's smile when he gave it to me, remembering how he had told me that diamond was small but real, like our love, like our life together. I put the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly, as it always had. "I don't need this ring to make me happy," I said, looking at Veronica. "It already makes me happy, because it reminds me of a man who loved me truly, who respected me, who never made me feel like I was less than him. And it reminds me that I was once loved by someone who valued who I was, not what I could give him." I turned to Caleb. He was looking at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. "Your father would have been so disappointed in you," I said quietly. "He spent his life working to give us a future. He died building buildings for other people because he wanted you to have opportunities he never had. And you used those opportunities to become someone who kicks his own mother into the street." "I didn't want to," whispered Caleb. I just wanted Veronica to be happy. She said we could never really be a family while you were here, that you would always put yourself first, that I would never have my full attention. And I thought if you left, everything would be better. "So your wife manipulated you," I said without emotion in my voice, "and you let her. Because it was easier to cut me out of your life than to set boundaries with her. Because it was more comfortable to sacrifice me than to risk your marriage. Because in the end, I had always been there, always forgiven, always come back. And you thought this time wouldn't be different." Caleb finally looked up. His eyes were red, swollen. I wondered if it was genuine guilt or just fear of the consequences. "I'm sorry," he said. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. You can stay. Please, stay in the house. We'll make it work. Veronica and I can change. We can be better." I looked at my son. I saw the 5-year-old boy crying in my arms after nightmares. I saw the teenager bringing me flowers when I found out I lost my job at the factory. I saw the young man promising at his father's funeral that he would always take care of me. All those Calebs had existed once, but the man in front of me now was different. He was a stranger who only said, "I'm sorry," because he was scared, not because he truly understood the harm he had caused. "No, Caleb," I said, feeling a strange peace settling over me. "I am not going to stay. I am not going to live in this house again. Because every time I walked through that door, I would remember how you threw me out of it. Every time I sat in that living room, I would remember how your wife forbade me to be there. Every time I cooked in that kitchen, I would remember all the times you criticized my food. This house is no longer my home. It stopped being so long before today." Benjamin cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thompson, if you are determined to sell, I need you to sign some documents tonight to initiate the process." I also need Caleb and Veronica to sign accepting the terms. If they refuse, we will proceed with the judicial route. They are going to sign, I said with certainty, because the alternative is much worse for them. Caleb looked at Veronica. She had her face petrified in an expression of pure hate, but she nodded slightly. She knew when she had lost. We will sign, said Caleb with a dead voice. We'll do whatever you ask. Benjamin took several documents out of his briefcase. He spread them out on the coffee table, next to the Christmas gifts Arthur had brought, and that lay forgotten on the floor. He began to explain each document with a professional voice, pointing to lines, explaining legal terms. Asterisk. This document voids any transfer of property signed under false pretenses. This reinstates the 50-50 co-ownership. This authorizes the sale of the property. This establishes the division of proceeds. And this is a non-aggression agreement stating that no party will file additional charges as long as the terms are met. Asterisk. Caleb signed first. His hand shook so much he could barely hold the pen straight. His signature, usually clear and architectural, came out as deformed scrawls. Veronica signed next, pressing the pen so hard against the paper she almost tore it. Every stroke was violent, full of contained rage. Then it was my turn. I took the pen Benjamin offered me. My hand was steady, steadier than it had been in years. I signed my name clearly. Margaret Thompson. Not widow of Thompson. Just Margaret Thompson. A woman. A human being. A person with rights and dignity. Arthur signed as a witness. Benjamin as a notary. That's it, said Benjamin, gathering the documents. From this moment, the property will be on the market. I recommend a reputable real estate agency that can handle the sale quickly. With the current market, I would estimate between 4 and 6 weeks to find a serious buyer. 4 to 6 weeks, repeated Veronica bitterly. Where are we supposed to live afterwards? You have $150,000 coming, answered Arthur. Use it wisely. Find a place you can afford. Learn to live within your means. Learn, for the first time, what it is to build something from scratch without using other people. And in the meantime, asked Caleb, during these 4 to 6 weeks, can you stay here? I said, surprising everyone, including myself. But there are rules. Arthur and Benjamin are going to document the current state of the house with photographs and video. Any damage, anything missing, any attempt at sabotage, and I press charges immediately. Do you understand? Caleb nodded quickly. Veronica clenched her jaw, but said nothing. And I continued, am not going to step foot in this house again. Not until it is sold and I have to pick up the few things of mine that really matter. My clothes, my photos, my personal documents, I want them packed and delivered to Arthur's house tomorrow before noon. Who is going to pack? Asked Veronica with a defiant tone. You are, I answered. You are going to pack every single one of my belongings carefully. You are going to treat them with respect, and you are going to deliver them complete and undamaged. Because Arthur is going to be present supervising, and he has a detailed list of everything that belongs to me. Arthur took out his phone. During the last 2 hours, while Margaret was in my car, I took photographs of her entire room, of her closet, of her drawers, of every personal object she has in this house. I have complete photographic documentation. So yes, I will know if something is missing. Veronica seemed to want to say something else, but Caleb put a hand on her arm, stopping her. Just do it, he murmured. We already lost. Just let's finish this. Benjamin put the documents back in his briefcase. Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Thompson, this concludes the initial legal process. You will receive certified copies of all documents within 48 hours. The real estate agency will contact you within a week. And remember, the non-aggression agreement is conditional. Any violation of the terms voids it automatically. Understood, said Caleb with a dull voice. I turned toward the door. Arthur picked up the gift bags he had brought, those bags that had fallen to the floor what seemed like years ago, but had actually been less than 2 hours. Wait. Caleb's voice stopped me. Mom, wait, please. I stopped. But I didn't turn around. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, Caleb continued. I know I ruined everything, but you need to know that I loved you, that I still love you, that I never wanted things to get to this point. I turned slowly. I looked him in the eyes, those eyes that had been identical to his father's. "Love isn't what you feel, Caleb," I said with a tired voice. "Love is what you do, and what you did was betray me in the worst way possible. So don't talk to me about love. You have no idea what that word means." I walked out of the house. Arthur closed the door behind us. The cold air of Christmas night hit my face. I could hear carols playing from the neighbor's house. Colored lights twinkled in every yard on the street. Families gathered, happy, celebrating. And I was walking away from the only house I had called home for 15 years. But strangely, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel lost. I felt light. As if I had dropped a huge weight I had been carrying for so long, I didn't even remember what it felt like to walk without it. Arthur opened his car door. He helped me in gently. Benjamin put his briefcase in his own vehicle and said goodbye with a respectful nod before driving off. "How do you feel?" asked Arthur as he started the engine. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I should feel destroyed. I just lost my son. I just lost my house. I just lost everything I built over 15 years. Arthur drove in silence for a moment before answering. "You didn't lose anything, sister. They took it from you. There is a difference. And now you are recovering what is yours, your dignity, your worth, your life." We arrived at his house 30 minutes later. A smaller house than mine, but cozy, full of books and mementos from his career as a judge. He had never married. He always said his work was his wife. But I knew part of the reason was that he had dedicated so much time taking care of me, supporting me after Robert's death, helping me with Caleb when he was a child, that he had simply never found the right time. "The guest room is ready," he said, opening the door. "I cleaned and put on fresh sheets this morning. When you called me, you can stay here as long as you need. Months, years, whatever. Thank you," I whispered, feeling the tears finally threatening to overflow. "Don't thank me," he said firmly. "This is what real family does. They take care of each other. They protect. They don't destroy." That night, I slept in Arthur's guest room. Or rather, I tried to sleep. I lay awake looking at the unfamiliar ceiling, listening to the strange sounds of a house that wasn't mine, feeling the void where my son's love should be. But I also felt something else, something new, something it took me hours to identify. It was freedom. The following days passed in a strange haze. Caleb called, many times. He left voicemails crying, begging, promising to change. Veronica also called, although her messages were different, more calculating, talking about agreements, negotiations, ways we could resolve this without lawyers or forced sales. I didn't answer any calls. Arthur supervised the delivery of my belongings. They arrived in carefully packed boxes, every object wrapped in paper, every garment folded correctly. Caleb had followed the instructions to the letter, probably fearing any mistake would result in criminal charges. I opened the boxes slowly. My old clothes, my family photos, the albums from when Caleb was a child, the letters Robert had written to me while we were dating, my mother's rosary, the shawl knitted by my grandmother. Pieces of a life I had thought was complete, but now saw was built on fragile foundations. A week after Christmas, the real estate agency contacted all parties. The house was officially on the market. The suggested listing price was $335,000. With market conditions and the desirable location, they expected quick offers. 2 weeks later, the first offer arrived, $320,000. Cash. Closing in 30 days. Benjamin gathered us all in his office to discuss the offer. I arrived with Arthur. Caleb and Veronica arrived together, but there was a distance between them, a physical space revealing cracks in their perfect marriage. "It's a good offer," said Benjamin. "The market is competitive, but this is solid. My recommendation is to accept." "We accept," I said immediately. Caleb nodded without saying a word. Veronica signed the acceptance documents with abrupt movements. "Closing is scheduled for February 20th, informed Benjamin. "By that date, the property must be completely vacated. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson have until February 15th to move out and leave the house in sale condition." During those weeks, I received more calls, family members who had found out about the situation. My sister Patricia, who lived in San Diego, called furious. "I always knew that woman was a viper," she said, referring to Veronica. I told you at the wedding. I told you something didn't fit. But no, you wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. You wanted to believe Caleb had found true love. You were right, I admitted. About everything. And now what are you going to do? She asked. Where are you going to live? I don't know yet, I answered. Arthur says I can stay with him as long as I want, but I need to find my own place. I need to start over. With $200,000 you can buy something nice, Patricia pointed out. Something small but yours. Completely yours. Without ungrateful children. Without manipulative daughters-in-law. She was right. With $200,000, I had options. I could buy a small condo. I could invest part of the money and live off the combined interest and my pension. I could finally live for myself for the first time in 68 years. But before I could make plans, something happened. Caleb appeared at Arthur's door one night in mid-February. I was in the living room reading when the doorbell rang. Arthur opened the door, and his expression hardened immediately. What are you doing here? He asked with a cold tone. I need to talk to Mom, said Caleb. His voice sounded broken, desperate. Please, Uncle. Just 5 minutes. Arthur turned to me. The decision is yours, sister. Part of me wanted to tell him to leave, that I had already heard enough empty apologies. But another part, that maternal part that never dies completely no matter how much they hurt you, needed to know what was so urgent. Let him in, I said finally. Caleb entered. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. This was not the successful and impeccable man who had stood in that living room weeks ago. This was a destroyed man. Mom, he began, and his voice cracked immediately. Veronica left me. I remained silent, waiting. She left 3 days ago, he continued. She took her things and left. She said she wasn't going to stay with a loser who couldn't even keep his own mother under control. She said I was weak, that I let myself be manipulated by you and Uncle Arthur, that I ruined our future. He let the words settle in the air between us. And now you are here because you feel alone, I said without emotion. Because your wife abandoned you when things got tough, because you finally saw who she really was. No, he shook his head. I am here because you were right. About everything. About her. About me. About what I became. And I need you to know that I am sorry. Not because I am scared or because I want something, but because I finally understand what I did to you. Arthur was standing in the doorway of the living room, arms crossed, observing the scene with Judge's eyes. You understand, I repeated. What exactly is it that you understand, Caleb? He wiped tears with the back of his hand. I understand that I spent 5 years letting someone else destroy the most important person in my life. I understand that I changed who I was to please a woman who never really loved me. I understand that I kicked my own mother into the street because it was easier than confronting my wife. I understand that I am a coward. His voice rose, full of self-inflicted pain. I understand that I betrayed everything Dad taught me. I understand that I broke the heart of the only person who was always there for me. I understand that I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that I finally see it. I finally see the monster I became. I looked at him. This broken man in front of me. My son. And I felt nothing. I didn't feel the urgency to console him. I didn't feel the impulse to hug him and tell him everything would be okay. I didn't feel the need to sacrifice myself once more to alleviate his pain. I felt compassion, but it was a distant compassion, like what you feel for a stranger suffering in the street. It wasn't the unconditional and blind love that had defined our relationship for 42 years. I believe you, I said finally. I believe you regret it. I believe you finally see what you did. But Caleb, regret does not erase the damage. It doesn't turn back time. It doesn't heal wounds. I know, he whispered. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know. There is something else you need to know, I said, taking a deep breath. I forgive you. His eyes widened with surprise. I forgive you, I repeated. Because if I don't, this poison will stay inside me forever. Because forgiveness isn't for you. It is for me, for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Forgiveness doesn't mean we go back to what we were. Forgiveness doesn't mean I allow you to hurt me again. I understand, he said with a broken voice. I'm not sure you do, I continued. All your life, I was there every time you needed me. Every fall, every pain, every problem, I appeared. And you learned to expect that, to count on that, to take for granted that Mom would always be there no matter what. My hands closed into fists on my lap. But I can't be that person anymore. Caleb, I can no longer be the one who always gives, always forgives, always comes back. Because if I keep being that person, I am going to disappear completely. And finally, at 68 years old, I am starting to understand that I matter too. That my life has value beyond what I can give to others. Arthur nodded from his position in the doorway, a gesture almost imperceptible of approval. So, what does this mean? Asked Caleb. Does it mean we are never going to talk again? Does it mean I lost my mother forever? It means you need to rebuild your life without using me as a crutch, I answered. It means you need to learn who you are when you don't have Mom fixing everything. It means that the Caleb I raised, that good and affectionate boy, needs to find his way back without my help. And if I find him, he asked, with a voice barely audible, if I become the man I should have been, will there be room for me in your life then? I looked at my son. I saw the genuine pain in his eyes. I saw the weight of his actions finally pressing on his shoulders. I saw a man who had hit rock bottom and was trying to find a way up. I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me in a year. Ask me when you have demonstrated with actions, not with words, that you really changed. Ask me when you have made peace with who you were and who you want to be. Ask me when you can stand in front of me without carrying guilt or expectations. Caleb nodded slowly. He stood up. He wiped his tears. I'm going to do it, he said. I'm going to become someone who would make you proud. Even if you never know, even if you never speak to me again, I'm going to do it because I need to. Because Dad deserves it. Because you deserve it. He headed toward the door. He stopped before leaving. I love you, Mom. I have always loved you. And I am so sorry I waited until I lost you to realize how much. I love you too, I answered. And that is precisely why this hurts so much. Because love without respect is just pain disguised as devotion. Caleb left. The door closed behind him. And for the first time since Christmas, I cried. Not for what I had lost, but for what could have been if my son had chosen differently. Arthur sat next to me. He said nothing. He just put his arm around my shoulders and let me cry. February 20th arrived. The day of the sale closing. We all gathered at the notary's office. Caleb arrived alone. He looked a little better than last time, as if he had been sleeping more, eating properly. We greeted each other with a polite nod. Nothing more. The papers were signed. The bank accounts transferred. The house I had bought with my husband's blood, where I had raised my son, where I had loved and lost again, officially changed hands. The notary handed out the checks, $200,000 for me, $120,000 for Caleb, after the legal and sale costs he had agreed to cover were deducted. Caleb looked at his check with a blank expression. Veronica had left with $50,000 of their joint savings. He had $120,000, less than his father had originally invested 15 years ago. The irony did not go unnoticed. What are you going to do now? Benjamin asked Caleb as he put away the final documents. I'm going to move into a smaller apartment, Caleb answered. I'm going to focus on my work. I'm going to rebuild. Alone. And you, Margaret? Asked Benjamin, turning to me. Have you thought about what you will do with your new beginning? I smiled, a small but genuine smile. I've been looking at condos. There is one near the park where Robert and I used to walk on Sundays. It has 2 bedrooms, a balcony overlooking the trees, good natural light. It costs $140,000. Sounds perfect, commented Arthur. It is, I nodded. And with the $60,000 I have left over, I can invest, have a safety net. For the first time in my life, I am going to have financial stability that depends on no one but me. We said goodbye outside the notary's office. Caleb stood by his car, looking at me as if he wanted to say something else. But he didn't. He just raised his hand in a gesture of farewell. I returned the gesture, and then Arthur and I left. 3 weeks later, I moved into my new condo. It was smaller than the house, of course, but it was mine. Completely mine. The walls were painted a soft cream color I chose. The furniture was a mix of new pieces I bought and some old things I had saved from my previous life. The photos on the walls were of Robert, of my parents, of Arthur, of Caleb as a child. But there were no recent photos of Caleb. Not yet. Patricia came to visit me from San Diego. She stayed a week, helping me decorate, cooking together, laughing about old memories. "You look different," she told me one night while we drank tea on my new balcony. "I can't explain it exactly, but you look more you." "I feel more me," I admitted. "I feel like I had been wearing a costume for years and finally took it off." "It's because you stopped living for others," she said wisely. "You stopped measuring your worth by how much you could give. You started understanding that your existence has value in itself." She was right. For 68 years, I had defined my value by my utility. I was valuable because I was a mother, because I was a wife, because I cared, cooked, cleaned, gave. But now, sitting on my own balcony, in my own space, with my own future, I understood I had been valuable the whole time, not for what I did, but for who I was. Months passed. I established a routine. I joined a book club at the local library. I started taking painting classes on Tuesday afternoons. I made friends, women my age who were also navigating life after losses, divorces, betrayals. We shared stories. We laughed. We supported each other. Arthur came for dinner every Sunday. Sometimes he brought old movies we watched together. Sometimes we just talked, remembering our childhood, sharing thoughts on life. In June, 6 months after that terrible Christmas, I received a letter. It was from Caleb, handwritten on quality paper. "Dear Mom," it began. "I am not writing to ask for forgiveness again. I am not writing to explain or justify. I am writing because I wanted you to know that I am working on myself. I started therapy. I am facing the things I avoided for years. I am learning about boundaries, about manipulation, about how I lost my way." The letter continued for 3 pages. It spoke of his therapy sessions, of how he was starting to understand the patterns of his relationship with Veronica, of how he had allowed his need for approval to turn him into someone he himself didn't recognize, of how he was learning to be alone, to be self-sufficient, not to seek external validation. "I don't expect a reply," ended the letter. "I just needed you to know that the work is being done, that your son is trying to find his way back to the person Dad would have wanted him to be. I love you. I will always love you, and someday I hope to be able to demonstrate it to you in ways that really matter." I folded the letter carefully. I put it in a drawer in my desk. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready yet. But I kept it, and that was something. A full year passed since that Christmas. December arrived again, bringing cold air and bright lights and carols in every store. But this year was different. This year, I had my own tree in my own living room. This year, Arthur and Patricia were coming to my house for Christmas dinner. This year, I was the hostess of my own celebration. On Christmas Eve morning, while I was preparing the turkey and setting the table, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone until the afternoon. I opened the door and found Caleb. But it wasn't the Caleb I had seen in February at the notary's office. This man looked healthy. His eyes were clear. His posture was different, straighter, but somehow more humble at the same time. He was carrying a small box in his hands. "Hi, Mom," he said with a soft voice. "I know I didn't ask permission to come, and if you want me to leave, I will leave immediately. But I wanted to bring you this." He extended the box. I took it with trembling hands. I opened it. Inside was a photo frame. But it wasn't just any photo. It was a photograph of Robert and me the day we bought the house. I didn't know this photo existed. We were standing in front of the front yard, Robert with his arm around my shoulders, both smiling with that pure happiness that only comes when you achieve something you thought you could never have. "I found it when I was packing my things from the house," explained Caleb. "It was in a box in the attic. Dad must have taken it with the camera timer. And when I saw it, I knew I had to give it to you, because that house was always yours. It was always the dream you built together, and I had no right to take it from you." Tears began to run down my cheeks. I touched the glass of the frame, tracing the outline of Robert's face. "Thank you." I whispered. There is something else, said Caleb. Something I need to tell you. I have been in therapy for 11 months, and my therapist helped me understand something important. For years, after Dad died, I turned you into my everything. You were my mother, my father, my support, my whole world. And when Veronica arrived, she saw that. She saw how much power she had over me, and she felt threatened. He paused, organizing his thoughts. She manipulated me, yes, but I allowed it because deep down, part of me felt I needed to choose, that I couldn't have both things, my mother's love and my wife's love, and I chose wrong. I chose the person who made me feel necessary in ways that inflated my ego, instead of the person who loved me unconditionally without asking for anything in return. He took a deep breath. Now I understand it was never a choice between you two. It was a choice between being manipulated or setting healthy boundaries. It was a choice between losing myself or maintaining my integrity, and I failed. I failed spectacularly. But I am learning, I am growing, and I wanted you to know that I am not looking to go back to being your son like before. I am looking to build something new, something healthier, something where we both have space to be ourselves. I looked at him truly for the first time in a year. I saw sincerity in his eyes. I saw maturity that hadn't been there before. I saw a man who had done the hard work of looking in the mirror and not looking away from what he saw. Come in, I said finally. There is fresh coffee. His face lit up with cautious hope. Really, really. But Caleb, you need to understand something. This is not instant forgiveness. This is not going back to how we were. This is a beginning. A very small beginning. And every step from here on out is earned, not taken for granted. I understand. He nodded quickly. I understand completely. He entered. He sat at my small kitchen table. I poured coffee. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of a year of separation between us. Tell me, I said finally. Tell me about your life now. About who you are when you don't have Veronica telling you who to be, or me covering your back. And he spoke. He told me about his small but tidy apartment, about how he had learned to cook his own meals, about how he had rebuilt his architecture business from scratch after several clients abandoned him when his reputation suffered from the divorce, about the friendships he had let wither during his marriage and was now trying to repair, about the nights he spent alone, facing who he was without distractions. And most importantly, he continued, I learned to be okay with myself, to not need constant validation, to not look for someone to complete me because I finally understood I needed to be complete by myself first. I smiled slightly. Your father would have been proud to hear that. Caleb's eyes filled with tears. I hope so. I hope that from wherever he is, he can see that I am trying, that I didn't give up, that his son is finding his way back. We spent 2 hours talking. It was awkward at times. There were long silences. There were moments where old wounds threatened to open again. But there were also moments of genuine connection, moments where I saw flashes of the boy I had raised, moments where I felt that maybe, just maybe, something could be rebuilt from the ashes. I need to go, he said finally, looking at his watch. I know you have plans for tonight, and I don't want to invade your space. He stood up. Me too. Caleb, I said as he headed to the door. The letter you sent in June. I read it, all the words, and it meant something. Not enough to reply at that moment, but it meant something. That is more than I deserved, he answered with a soft voice. Probably, I nodded. But here is the thing about mothers. Even when their children break them, even when they need to distance themselves to protect themselves, a part of them always waits, always keeps a small window open, and you just push that window a little more. Can I write to you again? He asked. Tell you about my progress. Keep you updated on my life, without expecting replies, just so you know I'm still working. You can, I said after thinking about it for a moment. And this time, I'll probably reply. I don't promise when. I don't promise how often. But I'll probably reply. Caleb smiled. It was a small, sad, but genuine smile. That is more than I dared to hope for. Thank you, Mom, for giving me a chance, for not closing the door completely. He left. I closed the door and leaned against it, holding the frame with the photo of Robert and me. I looked at that image of two young people, full of hope, starting their life together, and I thought about everything I had lived since then. The love, the loss, the betrayal, the rebirth. Arthur arrived that afternoon with Patricia. They saw the new frame on my shelf and raised their eyebrows with questions. I told them about Caleb's visit, about our conversation, about the small step we had taken. "Be careful," warned Patricia. "Don't let him hurt you again." "I won't," I promised. "But I'm not going to close my heart completely either. There is a difference between protecting yourself and becoming so hard you can no longer feel anything." Arthur nodded with approval. "That is the wisdom you were looking for, sister. It is not revenge. It is not blind forgiveness. It is balance. It is knowing when to open and when to close. It is honoring your pain without letting it define you." We dined together that night. We laughed. We shared stories. We toasted to new beginnings and second chances, and the strength that comes from surviving what you thought would destroy you. And later, when Arthur and Patricia left, and I remained alone in my small condo, I sat on my balcony wrapped in a blanket, looking at the city lights. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, the woman sitting on a cold corner with her belongings in garbage bags, feeling like her life had ended. That woman had believed her value ended where her utility ended, that without someone to take care of, she was no one. That love meant infinite sacrifice without limits or protections. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I was Margaret Thompson, 69 years old, widow, mother, sister, friend, and above all, a woman who had learned that self-love is not selfishness, that setting boundaries is not cruelty, that rebuilding your life after destruction is not abandoning those who hurt you, but honoring yourself finally. The house Robert and I bought was no longer mine. But I had built something better. I had built a life where my worth didn't depend on how much I could give or endure. A life where I was enough simply for existing. Caleb would have to make his own way back. He would have to prove with actions, not words, that he had truly changed. And maybe someday, when he had demonstrated that the man he had become was worthy of the trust he had broken, we could have a relationship again. Not like before, never like before, but something new, something healthier, something built on mutual respect instead of unilateral sacrifice. Or maybe not. Maybe the damage was too deep. Maybe some things, once broken, can never be completely repaired, and that was okay too, because I would be okay either way, because I had learned the most important lesson of all, that my happiness, my peace, my life, depended on no one but myself. The cold December wind blew across the balcony. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, and for the first time in 69 years, I felt completely free. Free from the weight of impossible expectations, free from the need to be everything for everyone, free from measuring my worth by how much I could endure, free from living for others while fading into the shadows. This was my life now, small perhaps, quieter, less complicated, but it was mine. Completely, absolutely, unquestionably mine. And in the end, after everything I had lost, everything I had suffered, everything I had survived, that was exactly what I needed. Not revenge, not victory, just peace, just dignity, just the quiet certainty that I would never again allow anyone, not even my own son, to make me feel like I was less than enough. Because I was. I always had been. It just took me 69 years and a broken heart to finally believe it.